You are a seeker.
Mm.
You do not know. That is the baseline.
Mm.
You are starting from a clean slate. I do not know what love is.
Mm.
To have the humility, I do not know. And I am coming to you to, first of all, to understand, then to experience, to embody.
Mm.
But right now, I am open
Right.
and surrendered, and I have curiosity and I have humility to admit that I do not know.
This episode is special for two reasons. I had to figure how to do a podcast online because it gives me access to more people. Second, because Manoj and I share a special connection. He's a friend and mentor who significantly influenced my journey. Describing Manoj is challenging because he doesn't fit into a box. For example, he's both childlike and ascetic like, and so there are a bunch of these seemingly conflicting aspects that he somehow seems to have integrated in him. Yet, here is an attempt. An engineer and designer by qualification, Manoj gave up on his traditional career journey in his late 20s to pursue his calling. His fascination to explore Sri Aurobindo's ideas on integral yoga drew him to Auroville, which is a one of its kind experimental community in Tamil Nadu, comprising of residents from more than 50 countries, with the fascinating pursuit to realize the ideal of human unity in diversity. Over the years, Manoj has worn several hats inside and outside the community of Auroville, including that of a filmmaker, designer, architect, technologist, coach, educator, and institution builder. His knowledge on human psychology, transformative practices, and a subjective view of the evolutionary journey of mankind is deep and fascinating. He's a prolific writer, speaker, and conversationalist. He's currently pouring his love and energy into building for helping young people discover and internalize transformative ideas and get closer to their potential. In our conversation, we explored the human psychological mapping, existential questions because of AI, limitations of the cognitive mind, purpose, transformation, perspectives on education, models of governance, and more. Let's go into the conversation.
It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Manoj. We'll jump right in.
Yeah, so happy to have these conversations with you and meet you in this way.
Yeah. So I'll start with the latest developments in AI. So Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, in his conversation with Lex Friedman, compared the latest GPT to the earliest computers. I mean, the stage of development of the latest GPT to the earliest computers. Then Bill Gates recently published a note, "The age of AI has begun," in which he called one of his GPT interactions as one of the two uh, revolutionary tech demonstrations in his lifetime. So it's clear that we're at this uh, critical juncture of revolution. And in the past, in with like the earlier industrial revolutions, we kind of saw how uh, kind of like abstracting physicality and being able to delegate that to machines had like an impact. And among other things, one of the things that happened was humans pursuing more intellectual and creative pursuits. And so now, with the revolution that AI is bringing and uh, our ability to sort of abstract intelligence, sophisticated forms of intelligence, uh, how do you think um, this sort of what sort of lies ahead? Because at this point, we kind of draw our purpose from these pursuits, right? So now that this has been abstracted at the psychological realm, what lies ahead for us as a collective? What are the different scenarios from here? Can
Wow.
we chart them out?
That's quite a question. What lies ahead, especially with this revolution
Yeah.
that is exploding right in front of us? And yeah, since I'm not a technology person fundamentally, I'm coming more from yoga, consciousness perspective,
Yeah.
particularly Sri Aurobindo's
Yeah.
integral psychology, integral yoga perspective. From there, the lens with which I look at it is evolution, where humanity is evolving from the age of reason to spiritual age. And that is the broad context of
Mm-hmm.
Sri Aurobindo's vision of what is happening in the world. And when we look at AI arriving on the scene,
Mm-hmm.
it's really like age of reason harvesting its wealth and integrating it into a single powerful intelligence, but it is still rational intelligence.
Right.
It is a kind of a flowering of age of reason. Let's say, even if we just look at material things, there is almost a mechanical intelligence putting things in order.
Mm-hmm.
Laws of physics, and it follows the laws, principles. Then we have whole world of life forms that emerged out of this matter following another principle, though it
Mm-hmm.
obeys physical laws,
Mm-hmm.
but it has brought in something else, more instinctive intelligence. And its top layer, we can say, is emotional intelligence, ability to empathize and sense, and it is a very different form of intelligence. So then came this rational intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, let's say, these three different layers of intelligence. There is a very mechanical intelligence running the material world and its laws, and it governs.
Yeah.
And it follows that intelligence mechanically. Then there is a life instinct and its own intelligence, which we subjectively experience our own instinctive intelligence in the body, as well as finest layer of it is more, I would say, the emotional intelligence that we can experience. We can sense things in
Mm-hmm.
people, how someone
Mm-hmm.
else is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is a rational intelligence, which is again an abstraction, ability to think and go beyond sensory evidence and know things. Now that power is, as of now, the highest faculty. But
Right.
from a yogic perspective, there are even deeper and higher types of, it is, we cannot even call it intelligence.
Yeah.
There is wisdom, we can say. And intellectual pursuit is coming to a crisis where we, let's say, our human mind, it is
Mm-hmm.
human being who is in crisis. With
Yeah.
our limited rational intelligence, we are not able to comprehend what lies ahead.
Mm-hmm.
We are setting in motion our own progeny, which is a technology
Right.
that seems to be evolving much more rapidly and
Yeah.
becoming smarter in a particular skill set that we have, which is rational thinking.
Yeah.
And it is outsmarting us.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we do if this is a pursuit that is now coming to a point of bifurcation,
Mm-hmm.
where it is objectified, it has been converted into technology. If
Right.
this is put out, end of the day, still AI has to be given instruction in terms of go from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence needs a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we are transcending individually, or if we come to an end of our rational intelligence, what lies beyond? We are assuming that it is rational intelligence that is giving us sense of purpose. There is a rational sense of purpose. But is the sense of purpose coming from that? What is the other dimensions? For example, yoga begins where whole languaging ends. When your mind is coming to deep silence.
Right.
From there, when you're not thinking, you're opening to a level of wisdom, we can say, that is not rational. We are opening to a mystical dimension where we can train our mind to be receptive to a greater inflow of, let's say, intuition, which shows sense of direction in terms of perception. But we human beings are not just perception, not just cognition. There is this whole experiential dimension of, let's say, sense of beauty and harmony and love and experience of delight. Now that is pure subjective domain.
Yeah.
So when an artist is pursuing something and creating an aesthetic delight through an experience, that is very, very human.
Yeah.
Now, that domain, that lies not at the level of reason. It is a domain of emotions, feelings. That dimension is very deeply human subjective space. So there is a subjective interiority where this experience is unfolding.
So what's more to explore there? So far as well, we've been kind of exploring emotions. All these like subjective elements as well have been part of the human experience very much. So in terms of the psychological advancements, uh, I'm still not sure, like, what are we looking at like next?
Psychologically, like emotional intelligence or the whole domain of emotions, for example, remains unexplored, ill understood. It can be understood in terms of material reductionism, where a particular emotion has a corresponding chemistry in the body, whether it is oxytocin or all kinds of chemical structures. But what truly matters is our subjective experience. Now, we know that moments of aha experience where something profound moves in our heart.
Yeah.
And that reveals something that is profoundly beautiful. Say, when there is this experience of deep love or a mystical connection with nature, when we are in deep silence and there is a communion with nature, a deep sense of oneness and deep sense of connection, it is not just cognition. It transcends language, even interspecies communication, a connection with a plant, connection with an animal, connection with earth, with rock. It is not in the domain of rational intelligence. It is transcending rational intelligence. Mind is becoming silent. We are entering into a communion with nature, everything in nature, where our human linguistic domain has to come to a deep silence. And then from there, it is not just opening to an intimate connection with things that is around, it is also opening to a dynamic force that is playing through everything, and it is also expressing itself through you. And it can express itself through reason as well.
Okay.
So reason is one of the tool in our kitty. But there are other dimensions that makes experience of life rich.
Right.
And that entry point is accessible to us when the reasoning faculty coming to a silence.
Right.
Now, from there, when we have a perception that is in connection with nature and with the experience of deeper oneness with everything, from there we are seeing a purpose which is not we as human purpose, but nature has created us, and nature is pushing her own evolution through us, and nature is revealing certain next step in which we are just instruments. We may use AI to build things ahead, but that instruction, that perception, like A to B direction, is received from a wisdom that is greater, so that we can guide the new forms and powers of technologies that are emerging. Rational intelligence by itself cannot do that. We need a higher level of consciousness, perception, vision coming from a source which is different than reason. And that's the whole science of yoga, how to transcend the rational realm instead of sinking down into the animal pre-rational stage. How do you go beyond reason into a domain that is vaster? And it is subjective and experiential and in union with the wider nature.
Yeah.
Without that wisdom, we will be using this technological powers for purposes that are very much centered around our limited human ego. So who presides over these powers? Who will decide its algorithms, its purpose? Every system is designed for a purpose. So what is that purpose? That purpose and perception of the purpose.
So how does that sort of wake-up call work? Like, one of my models would be that given that, let's say, my like highest abilities from which I so far have been drawing purpose, since those don't meet my need for purpose anymore, I'm probably going to ask the question that what is it that makes me human? What really is sort of the purpose from here on? So, and like you described, like from here on, one sort of the mind enters into these into silence, and then there is more subjective forms of nature to explore and like all this purpose and stuff. So
what I guess what I'm curious about is what is the role of will in this from here on? Like, this is one of the paths that lie ahead of me. Uh, uh, so in me, like going from my status quo towards this sort of higher form of exploration, uh, what is what's the role of will, and what are some of the other paths that humanity could take from here? I think one you mentioned was that we could just be sort of like stuck in our ego loop and use these machines within sort of that domain. And but you also kind of mentioned that we have the opportunity for like a step change, which is like going into a new realm. uh, so yeah, if you could speak about uh, what's the role of will in the destinies that lie ahead, how does will sort of work, and can it be influenced?
So let's say there is the will of a tiny little ego empowered by intelligence, which is, let's say, rational intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But if this rational intelligence is serving the self-centricity of the ego, or its emotional or irrational impulses and fantasies,
Mm-hmm.
and this ego is empowered with the tremendous powers of technology, and it is centered around itself, and it
Mm-hmm.
has a fundamental sense that I am separate from nature, and it is my own self-aggrandization that is its drive to sustain itself
Mm-hmm.
against everything else. And it uses its will, its intelligence to serve that purpose. But even at a pure science level, there is already an understanding that reality is an indivisible oneness. Matter is not separate thing. Though our cognitive model experience says these things are separate. The same way, those who have transcended the rational intelligence and went into the deeper mystical experience of oneness, they perceive directly, experientially, the sense of oneness. And there, the dissolution of the ego is a step on the way. An ego, an intelligence serving an ego, versus when you're dissolving the ego, you're opening to something that is even beyond rational intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And you're entering into a field of connection with everything else, where you are merging into nature, because we are product of nature. So nature's own purpose will arise in us. We are not fighting against nature, but
Mm-hmm.
this requires, this experiential entry into that domain requires dissolving of the sense of separation created by the ego. And this requires, again, a deeper quietness and stepping out of the linguistically created, we can say, our mental language model in which we are living. That whole language space coming to deep silence. Then dissolving and entering into communion with nature and the direct subjective experience of oneness. From there, perception and action arising. There, it is no more the will of the tiny little individual, but a larger will of nature. We are tiny little instruments of vaster wisdom and power of nature. So there is a will that is beyond us. So when the will is experiencing itself within the framework of ego, and it is confronting other wills, all these wills are part of nature's wills. All 9 billion people on the planet, these are all part of one nature pushing through these people. Similarly, the entire trees and animals and everything is part of that one profound will that is acting, one profound wisdom that is acting, one profound love that is acting. And in which we individually are experiencing, I am a separate little will that is trying to master and confront and entering into a conflict with other people, nature. There is a constant confrontation and conflict that is arising. Because
So what's the model of transcending the ego will? The will
so,
that is
yeah.
shrunken and has its own sort of confined outlook.
So first of all, we need to install the right mindset. Like it is, let's say, it is now fashionable to say we are all interdependent. Preceding that, fashion was to say, no, we want to have our independence. So preceding that was dependence. There was dependence on other people or dependence on nature. Then there is this whole impulse to become independent, and you become independent, but you soon realize that you are not independent. You are actually interdependent. That's the third stage. We have reached there. We are happy to admit that we are interdependent, but we have not yet practically in action admitted that we are one. Reality is one thing, one being, not many beings. And this is a fundamental mindset required. It is to be installed, drilled into consciousness, into human psyche, that what I see as the person out there, the mountain out there, the tree out there, the bird out there, the soil out there, it's not separate from me, though I cannot perceive it.
Yeah.
Now, that inability to perceive that is a cognitive limitation. That cognitive limitation has to be opened up. And that's a frontier waiting for us. Otherwise, we are again putting the rational intelligence, ego-bound rational intelligence, putting that intelligence into an AI system that amplifies it way beyond we individually can do, but it is still that intelligence, limited intelligence. And it will do it.
It's not modeled around the idea of oneness that you spoke of. That's not part of its fundamental model.
So imagine an experiential entry into that universality of the being.
Yeah.
And from there, molding an AI system. Then you're putting that consciousness into it.
Yeah, I know how that would convert into a technical.
Yeah, but this is like a part of me when I hear this is like I have difficulty comprehending this, but for sure, like it's a fascinating idea. I'm curious if like you were sitting having drinks with your friends from the scientific community. What and how would what pressing questions would you present to them that challenge the puristic mental models they might have?
Now, first of all, when we are into research, for example, there is a starting point of research. Something is calling me to investigate.
Yeah.
Now, from where did that call come? Though you shape it as a rationally formulated hypothesis, but from where did it get planted in you?
Yeah. I mean, I would perceive it as curiosity about something.
Yeah, something is propelling you to investigate this or that.
Something in the operating. So you're basically suggesting where is the curiosity coming from? What is the origin of curiosity?
What is propelling you in your deepest level? And that's what in integral yoga we refers to as the aspiration, which is not a product of rational intelligence. We are born with certain propulsion. And this propulsion is there universally present in nature. And
Right.
that is behind the evolution in nature. And that evolutionary impulse in nature is awakening in you and pushing you
Yeah.
to investigate something.
Hmm.
And nature, if we are assuming,
Yeah.
as a proposition from yogic perspective, nature is seen as not just oneness, but also it has the wisdom, power, as well as the love. Now, the dimension of love is not experienced. We only get a little bit of a drop that is opening up in our heart space.
Yeah.
And when this propulsion happens, like, I love this work, this is something that is giving me sense of purpose, meaning, and the joy of exploration, and something is nudging me to go forward in this certain path. And it reveals step by step. And suddenly everything crystallizes into rational intelligence form. And you're able to explain it to somebody or validate it to somebody. But it is given to you, revealed to you.
Right.
You're an instrumental condition, and you can be a good instrument to receive what is the larger purpose nature has in human.
Right.
What she is unfolding on earth.
So
and how
you're basically talking about the operating system of things like inspiration.
Right.
Like,
Inspiration system, like when inspiration is treated as something that comes randomly.
so that's something to challenge. You're challenging that.
Yeah. How do we systematically train ourselves to open to the force of inspiration? Not just inspiration, the power of love, power of harmony in action. For example, now our human action is causing tremendous conflict and disharmony in nature. There is a tremendous destruction happening. There is natural destruction, destruction of the nature's resources.
Yeah.
Then there is a psychological breakdown that is happening,
Right.
and all levels of conflict that is arising. So we are not in sync. First of all, we are not in sync. Our actions are not in sync. How do we
Not in sync with
synchronize?
what?
Sync with the universal harmony. Say, if the human beings are not there in the picture,
Right.
nature had been thriving.
Okay.
Our system is evolving. Even without us, nature will go forward, but nature has created us for a purpose. And we are the kind of last flowering in nature's evolution. So nature has certain intention. And we are trying to control nature with our limited empowerment that is given to us. But if we listen to nature, nature herself will reveal what is her larger intention that is in harmony with the whole, and how do we experience that harmony within our individual subjective space. When we have that experience, we say it is very pleasant experience, or we say, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Where does that come from? Just because like the nature of it is kind of subjective. We have not
It is
really
a subjective. Yeah, it is subjective space where we are experiencing harmony or disharmony. The moment there is a disharmony within, we feel discomfort.
Yeah.
Can we act from a space? Yes.
Is there a good response to why does the mind usually tend to be more open to one of the two? So either objective or subjective. And is the ideal model like an integration of the two? How do you look at it?
Yes, it has to be integrated. The subjective and objective, again, this is a cognitive limitation.
Mm-hmm.
We separate experience into subjective and objective,
Mm-hmm.
which is a limitation of the mind as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, mind again has the limitation of it past, present, and future. Future is unknown, past is already gone, and then there is a limited window of the present moment it can know.
Right.
So our fundamental problem is the limitation of the mind and its cognitive window.
Mm.
This can be opened up by systematic training.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be able to, or mind should be able to perceive across time into the future, as well as gaze into the past.
Mm.
And that is the type of consciousness Sri Aurobindo was referring to when he was talking about supermind, where time is not broken into present, future, or past. It is the totality of time. In Sanskrit, we would say Trikala Drishti. That's a very different range of consciousness, a cognition, and corresponding power of action in the world.
Mm.
And the difficulty of the mind is mind sees a tiny fraction and standardize it. And currently, because we have industrialized, we are mass producing and scaling it up at a planetary scale. And that too a mechanical part of rational intelligence driven by
Right.
language.
So these psychological frameworks that you're sharing about, and like the models given by Sri Aurobindo and other seers, they've existed for a long time. What is the barrier? What are the challenges that stand in the way of these uh, defined uh, states, defined psychological states?
First of all, recognizing that they exist
Hmm.
and bringing that as a collective understanding that it is possible for us humans to evolve into higher state of consciousness.
So the challenge would be that we're not able to recognize it.
Right. In India, this was recognized.
Mm-hmm.
And this had been going on for thousands of years. And we have living models of people who did it.
Mm-hmm.
Proof of the concept was always there in every generation, and it is possible, it can be done. And there is an evolutionary possibility in human nature. And mind is just a small middle term.
Mm-hmm.
And if we, like our notion of development, notion of evolution,
Mm.
purpose of education, even purpose of art, science, everything is oriented towards this evolutionary possibility that is lying ahead of us. It is already present, but first of all, recognizing it,
Mm.
that this type of cognitive range is accessible.
Mm-hmm.
When we access, then the reality appears very differently and we act differently.
Right.
So our world view needs to base itself on such evolutionary possibilities. Currently, when we are looking at what is the future,
Right.
is it going to the Mars or other
Yeah.
planets? There is an extension of our technological capabilities. But in terms of human beings and our cognitive range, how do we expand it? What are the possibilities? It is not known. The entire subjective space, traveling in subjective space, evolving
Yeah.
in subjective space, this is not part of our modern education system, modern worldview. It is a small stream that is kind of a fringe thought.
Mm-hmm. right? So that whole like step change opportunity is something to wake up to.
Yeah, the purpose of social development, purpose of human life, purpose of evolution in nature. If we draw it from evolution in nature and its
Yeah.
long-term purpose, nature is evolving towards something. Nature is manifesting something beyond human beings, beyond mind, a higher level of consciousness. If that is a bigger contextual framework, and humanity is transitioning from age of reason to spiritual age, that higher state of consciousness, and that is manifesting. Within that comes social development. Within that comes education, art, science, finding that way.
So
I'm curious, what is the limitation? Let's say, let's picture like a scientific mind, and they come with like intellectual honesty and not, uh, I was going to say ego. Uh, what is limiting this mind to open up to these possibilities? Why are they not able to enter into the subjective?
It is not enough to be honest, sincere, committed. The faculty has to be developed. Just like to become a scientist, you need to train the faculty of reason to be free from bias. There's a rigorous training required and a rigorous process that you follow so that your process is clean. Similarly, to go beyond reason, knowing from a faculty that is, let's say, knowledge by identity. That is what the term Sri Aurobindo uses. If you want to know a plant, the way the plant knows itself, you have to become the plant. You have to identify with the plant.
Yeah.
Now, assume that this is a proposition. This is a possibility. Then you have to train your faculty of consciousness to do that.
Right.
And that requires, it's like a professional training.
Yeah.
Here again, some people are, for example, some people are born with already sufficiently developed possibility, say rational intelligence itself. And some people are
Right.
already there, well developed. Some need to slog it out, train it out.
Right.
Similarly, in some people, intuition is already, you come with that.
So
So
what's
people are,
what's the
experience of knowing by identity? If we take that example of the plant, how's that experience of like establishing that oneness between the plant and the experiencer?
So here, it is not, so plant is not a rationally thinking intelligent being. It has a different way of knowing and being, sensing, feeling. And that's the space into which we are entering into. How a plant feels happy or sad, for example. It is experienced within you. Same thing happens with an animal or a larger landscape, for example. So the subjective space where there is an intimate sense of oneness, where the flow of so the happiness of a plant is subjectively experienced as your own happiness when you identify with it, its own joy. And we experience it with our close friends, people who are emotionally connected to us. For example, for a mother and child, when there's a pain for the child, mother feels that pain because there is a deep emotional bond. We don't experience that with the rest of the life that is around.
Right.
So what it means to feel the oneness, and that experience of oneness is where the window of love opens up. When you have the experience of falling in love with somebody, that person's inner dimension is opening to you.
Mm.
And that is enlarging and enlarging and identifying with a larger existence. Then we would even perceive that it is not necessarily the survival of the fittest
Mm-hmm.
that is pushing evolution forward, which is a limited perception created by our current limited cognitive window. And it is taught to everyone to compete.
What can people do to uh, integrate the two approaches, um, to not necessarily be locked into that rational frame?
Yeah, just like scientific training is required for the mind to be rational
Mm.
and free from bias or
Mm.
minimize biases.
Mm.
The same way the training required for developing the mind to be, say, silent and focused.
Mm.
Similarly, opening the emotional ranges in us. This requires training.
Mm.
How to open the emotional being in us, or how to open the dimension of powerful dynamic energy that is flowing through everything in life, everything in existence. Similarly, training the body to be a fit instrument that is capable of receiving the lightnings of wisdom or lightnings of power that can enter into the human nature.
Mm.
That requires training, and that is what yoga is all about. How to rapidly evolve, and how to evolve our mind, how to upgrade our mind, how to evolve our heart, how to evolve our vitality, how do we evolve our senses, how do we evolve our body, so that the body become extremely delicate instrument. Actually, body is such a profoundly delicate instrument.
Mm-hmm.
The potential of the body
Yeah.
is not recognized. How to refine it so that it can open to the ranges beyond what we have currently access to.
Yeah.
Then we are positioning ourselves into a space where action is unfolding from there. What's our action that you're doing, whether you're a scientist or a musician or building AI, you will be acting from that space.
Yeah.
And if you can harmonize with the larger intentions of nature, harmony is flowing through you, which is casting itself as knowledge and action.
Mm.
So you become a transmission point of harmony in nature, in the world.
Mm. That's an interesting way to look at it, for sure.
What are you embodying? What is the state of being that you have? And that is what you're scaling up. That is what you're transmitting.
Mm.
What drew you into uh, yoga at the beginning, into Sri Aurobindo, and what's kept you at it for so long? There are so many schools of thoughts and stuff available out there. What made you stick with him?
Look back, we understand. When I look back, I understand the process. But when I was going through it, I did not understand head or tail of what was happening.
Mm.
It's like you were living like a zombie, and somewhere in your early 20s, you're beginning to question things. Hey,
Yeah.
something is missing here. Something is wrong here. Something is nudging you from within. And that is what I would call the nature's prompt. But it is
Mm-hmm.
not a prompt that comes through vocabulary of words.
Mm-hmm.
It's a quiet will of nature saying, hey, wake up, wake up. You have been put into this journey for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, you don't know the nature is prompting. But more you begins to listen to it, then there is certain mysterious coincidence that brings things on your way. So when you listen to that prompt, on the one hand, prompt is from within. On the other hand, universe is responding. There's a conscious wisdom in nature that is responding and arranging things for you and nudging you to take this or that step. Or sometimes we are like, I was scared and on the edge of jumping into the unknown. Then there's a push that comes and throw you into kind of a free fall into an abyss, and you trust the fall and you surrender to that force. Then you see that you're not crash landing, you're beginning to float and you're beginning to fly, and there is a freedom that comes with it, and you begin to trust the force that is nudging you. And you open to the wave and you realize how to call that wave to take you forward. And you enjoy the ride on that wave. And then you see that you are not the one who is doing it. You're just an instrumental condition, but you can thoroughly enjoy the ride. And then you see that it is really like an interactive.
Is that your subjective experience moment to moment now that you're not the doer? How do, like, could you comment on, like, I love that idea, but for me, that's not my moment to moment reality. So I'm curious how, like, given that, like, you've been practicing for over 30 years now, what's your subjective experience?
In subjective space, you are all the time shifting from becoming a mechanical automation zombie, the old way, or waking up and becoming, you remember, I was falling back into my ego trap, or becoming free and seeing that something else is doing things and it is showing you the path. Walk this way, take that step, but you don't have a full picture. But you have the bodily instrumentation saying you took the right step. That's where you experience the deep peace and stillness and calmness. And then you see that you are dissolving more and more. You're not identifying yourself with this particular body because you see that wisdom is acting through everyone, everything. But then you occasionally forget it and you shrink and become small ego again, trying to confront this or that. There you become small. And then you wake up again. And then you relax. Okay, I forgot. The old habits came back. So that's a space of continuous transformation.
Right. So that doership attitude, you're saying that there's like moments of falling in and out of it, and an increasing amount of integration.
Yeah, increasing integration and even surrendering. It is more and more surrender to a larger force, a larger harmony, a force of harmony, where it reveals itself in you as knowledge. It propels you into action. It does the action. So there is a growing harmony with it. And you are not initiating anything. But the moment you get unplugged, then you're back into your tiny little window and you're trying to push. And that is where the ego will come into the picture.
Talk about surrender. I'm curious to unpack that more. I think there was a popular song from the Beatles which has like a line, how can I move forward when I don't know which way is it that I'm facing? So how can, like, how can I surrender when I don't know what is it that I'm surrendering
To what does it mean?
Wow. Yeah, that's a very beautiful, profound and fundamental question. When we are surrendering, what are we surrendering to? And how do we know it is the right force?
Yeah.
And this is where the training is required. Discernment. What is the faculty of discernment? So first of all, our current highest faculty is reason, rational intelligence, and it's buddhi. Now, if this is to be replaced with something else, how do we discern that something else which is not infra-rational? Because nature is vast and universal. Infra-rational stuff is also universal.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional irrationality and impulses, all these are universal.
You're
So
saying
one,
all kinds of forces are there. So
right, all
discerning
kinds
what
of,
force to surrender to.
right. There is a whole spectrum of force. For example, anger is not your anger or somebody else's anger. It is there in nature as like a wind flowing through. And human beings get carried away by that, and it spreads like a wave. Hatred spreads like a wave. There is a
Right.
contagion of force, a ripple effect. So is love. That is a contagion. It ripples through. So there is a spectrum of emotions and feelings that you can experience. From being restless to contracting, intense to being peaceful, harmonious, vast, widening, harmonious, and experience of increasing love. So you can see that you are either shrinking or expanding. You're experiencing peace, clarity, harmony, or you're entering into disharmony, shrinkage, smallness, anger, restlessness. So the moment restlessness enters, you know that you lost the harmony.
So that's a function of the nature of the force you're coming in touch with.
Right.
That
What is
has
the
a response in the body of
yeah.
these different kinds. Okay.
Right. Sri Aurobindo discerns there are two aspects of nature. That is, one is differentiating movement, and that creates and culminates in the formation of the individualized ego. The other is expanding and entering into the oneness. He refers to it as a higher nature and lower nature. So when we see that a force that is entering, that is differentiating and breaking you down into parts, or entering into a fragmentation process, that's when you see that you got caught into the lower nature. And higher nature is where it synthesizes, harmonizes, integrates, and it gives you vaster and vaster vision, vaster and vaster harmony. And the baseline is peace. 0 point. Like in scientific exploration, mathematical modeling, we have a 0 point. And then there is an action. From there, you know where you moved.
Yeah.
The same way for the consciousness exploration, the subjective space, peace is the baseline. So every mantra ends with Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Peace in the mind, peace in the vital, peace in the physical. So you have a reference point with which, when anything that enters into that space, you can see that it is a movement of fragmentation, disintegration, disharmony, or it is a wave that is raising you up into harmony, into vastness, into freedom, into love.
So how does one develop this discernment?
Relaxing into it. And first of all, we are not relaxed. Our present civilization and present generation, and because of the intensity of media propagation and propaganda, everyone is so restless, compulsive. So learning to unplug, being with nature, relaxing into nature. So nature is an incredibly healing space.
So that's a good way to develop sensitivity to forces, basically.
Right.
We become insensitive. I mean, I shouldn't say become or whatever, but like basically the
get
problem to solve is the insensitivity to the forces.
Yeah, disconnected from the forces of nature, or opening to only a tiny window which is constructed by our narrow, ego-bound human intelligence, carried by its own selfish motives, and scaling it up across the planet, propagandas, and we are plugged into that matrix. We have to unplug from it and plug into nature. And when we enter into nature, we have to learn to be silent, so that when we are looking at a flower or a plant or a tree or sky, we are looking at it with a deep silence and reverence, not the mind trying to analyze and think. Then only a space opens up for a communion.
And that connects again with the idea of knowing by identity that we were talking about.
Right, knowledge by identity. Where rational intelligence become a servant.
How did the subjective and objective aspects meet in Sri Aurobindo?
It's two sides of the same thing. And as we are inside, that's what we create outside. And outside is influencing what is inside, inside is influencing what is outside. And there's a seamless flow between the two.
Right.
And the more you become conscious, you realize that the material world outside is reflecting what you actually are inside. It works both ways. You change the outer, you experience the inner has shifted. You shift the inner, you see that the way you perceive the outer has shifted, and you also go and modify it differently. So there is a continuum, and outer is an objectification of the inner. The consciousness is the baseline. It projects and manifests itself into things that we experience objectively. This laptop we are looking at, all these were first conceived in the inner space, then projected into matter. Then it became a material reality.
So that's the inner to outer. What would be an example of outer to inner?
See, the nature, we are in nature, and there is a prompt from nature. Suddenly, a bird is waking you up from your trance in thought. You may be walking in nature, but you're lost in your thoughts. Suddenly you wake up to a call from nature, say a bird. Suddenly you realize that moment was very conscious, and the bird was conscious. There was a relationship, there was a connection with the bird. So what was outside, what we perceive as outside, is also very conscious part of the universal conscious nature. It can reach out to you through anything that is outside, even what is inanimate. It can bring your way through a wind, a paper cutting, and it fall on your way, and you have by chance you glance upon it and you pick it up, and it was a message for you. So the nudging is happening from outside as well as inside, and it is molding you from both sides. Just like a potter is molding a pot where one hand is inside and other hand is outside, and it is shaping the wall. The same way, nature is molding you from inside as well as from outside.
You're working on an animated film on the life and contributions of Sri Aurobindo to the Renaissance of India. Why is this an important film, and what is the message you want to convey?
First of all, in my own journey and all that I have read, what I have found is he is the one person who saw a vision that is ahead of humanity. He foresaw the crisis humanity was entering into, but through that crisis, birth of a new species. And that vision, that manifestation of a higher consciousness beyond mind is unfolding on earth, and it is an intention of nature. And that put everything in perspective for me. I haven't seen such a vision from anybody. When we look at today's world, visionaries talking about the future of humanity, we don't get clarity on, even if there are people talking about evolutionary possibility, we don't get to know what is that higher consciousness, what is the nature of it, what is the process by which we can evolve towards it, what are the steps on the way, what are the limitations that are binding us. And not just as a theory, here is somebody who actually walked the path, opened the doorways, and established in that consciousness and explained things from that consciousness. And he has put his experience in a deep, systematic, philosophical framework, rigorous logic in the book called Life Divine. And he also expressed it in a poetic form in Savitri. And these are two different ways to enter. For the mind to enter, there is a rational intelligence, philosophical reasoning through which you can enter. But from the heart and the soul to directly enter into the experiential realm of that journey, there is another door. And he has opened up doors in many ways. Plus, he himself walked the path and established. So he's a path-breaking journey that already has happened. There is a path already cleared and process is available. We are walking that path. And this is of utmost importance to humanity in this moment of crisis. And India has certain privilege in that sense, because in India, this evolutionary experimentation had been going on for a very long time. And there is an inherited knowledge base that is available to this country. And we have a responsibility as well. And the language that this journey has been expressed, it's much more accessible because of the cultural inheritance and less bias against it. So it's very, very important that we understand the journey that he has made, the knowledge that he has given. And this is not a repetition of the old spirituality.
Right.
This is a whole new frontier of human evolution that he has opened up.
Why do you say it's not a representative of the old spirituality?
So far, what we see in India is spiritual evolution as liberation spirituality, individual liberation, where an individual can evolve and liberate and go beyond mind. Actually, they say even reject the mind, everything, and dissolve into something that is pure spirit. An individual is done with birth and death, and that's the whole framework. That is, evolution is complete. You are done with birth.
Right.
That is liberation spirituality.
Right.
It is
that what would be called nirvana?
Right. And it, in a way, denies the whole earthly existence and evolutionary process unfolding here. This is kind of an illusion in which we are trapped. We can wake up and we can liberate ourselves into greater spiritual consciousness. And we are done with evolution. But Sri Aurobindo is saying is an ongoing process. Nature has an intention to evolve a new species, and even collective evolution is happening. And this is unprecedented. Birth of a new species and transformation of human nature. That's totally new. That's why even in India, it is not understood. People habitually classify it as, all are same. They're all talking about the same. It is not.
Yeah, there's definitely like that connotation around of like it's just like sort of like put into a bucket, and there's like a label to that.
Right. It's easy, and it takes away the burden of
Yeah, exactly.
systematic study.
I think that's the easy approach. I feel there's like need for examination, um,
Yeah,
like examination at like all levels when like such ideas are presented.
yeah. It's like if you want to study quantum physics, you're prepared to really invest your time and energy year after year to really go into the complications of it, the complexity of it, and
Yeah,
nuances of it. But when it
yeah,
comes to yoga, and especially
yeah,
Sri Aurobindo's vision, there is a profound complexity,
yeah,
detailed nuances, and mapping of terrains of consciousness. And
yeah,
if you are not willing to put years and years of labor
yeah,
of love to explore and understand, if you very easily just brush it aside saying it's all talking about the same
yeah.
thing, you miss the whole point.
I think there's the branding problem.
And also certain intellectual laziness
Yeah,
and lack of that aspiration. It's not that, like, personally, for example, I was not so much intellectually trained, or I was not particularly bright even in my schools. I was not at all anything that way. I was very ordinary.
right,
But to me, what helped was coming in touch with his consciousness through his writings, and that
right.
molded and shaped. It's not that my intellect is capable of understanding what he is writing, but by opening to his
Right.
language model, if I may say, modern jargons, if I am opening to his language model
Yeah,
and its integrity,
yeah.
and that enters and that reshapes your mind, even reshapes your brain, and that will enable eventually to perceive what he is saying and eventually translate into experience and action.
So your point of entry was uh through like a more subjective sort of uh doorway, and then developing uh like these models from which you operate now, which obviously like also translate into mental models and like
Right,
rational explanations of how the model works.
right. So when the prompt comes from within, you
Mm,
can't explain it because it is not at the realm of language. It is just nudging you to explore something or other.
right.
And you walk the path, and gradually dots start connecting.
Mm,
And it then become a kind of a stream. And eventually you come across, like I came across Europe, even though it was really like finding the ocean
yeah.
of wisdom. And
That's a
then,
beautiful metaphor.
yeah, and then you immerse in it, and that will reshape you, and that will shape your mind, and that will give you understanding. And then you have a rational understanding as well.
Right. So
You've kind of like been immersed into Sri Aurobindo for more than 30 years, and he's done like a very detailed psychological mapping. How have those models influenced? How have those models helped? Like, how do they help you have more meaningful interactions with people around you?
First of all, in the process of immersing in his wisdom, you are getting recast,
hmm,
and it creates its own language model, mental models. But that is the early phase of the journey, because first mind has to grasp in terms of intellect. If
hmm.
you are entering through the mind, it is not necessary that you have to enter through the mind.
Okay.
It is one of the doorways to enter into that wisdom.
Okay. So you enter through that, and then there is some parsing
My,
happening of the
my
mind.
yeah, my journey, my entry point was through the mind.
Okay.
And then you're parsing his text continuously.
Right.
In that process of parsing, it is actually reformatting your mind,
Okay.
and which will
That's
eventually give you clarity of seeing what he
that
is.
that's a powerful idea, because like you're basically through language you're able to enter into newer realms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he has experience.
Hmm.
He encoded the experience into a linguistic language model.
Hmm.
We don't have experience. What we have is the language model, which
The
represents an
experience.
experience.
Hmm.
So if we try to fit that experience into our experience and try to fit ocean into the little bottle, it won't work. Instead, we enter into that experience and begin to understand words, the way he uses words,
Right.
and enter into larger and larger understanding.
Hmm.
And as the mind gets shaped and more formed and integrated, then the function of the intellect in terms of a mental journey to understand will come to an inner quietude. Like you don't have to intellectually struggle. You come to a deep inner silence where even the mental models will dissolve. It is like a ladder that was used to enter.
Hmm.
Then you directly connect with him, his force, his Shakti.
Hmm.
Then that translates itself into new vocabulary, new language, new expressions.
Yeah. Even like new, like that'll also express through like a reforged rational intelligence and all of that.
Yeah, we have to open to that so that it can mold you. It can mold your mind. It can mold your expressions. If you are meant to express mentally, you express mentally. If you are meant to express artistically, you express artistically.
Hmm.
But you need to enter into that space of experience and
Hmm.
allow that to flow through you.
What do you think is the role of education in the development of an individual? You've been an educator, just to sort of like set context. You've been into the space of learning and education for a number of years now. How have your models developed around your view, and like what are some of the things you would challenge from the traditional system?
System is largely focused on the rational intelligence.
Hmm.
There is no development of your emotional being, for example.
Hmm.
How to develop your emotional being, how to develop your senses. Unless you become, say, if you are into music, then that faculty is trained, but it's a highly specialized aspect. Primarily, it is focused around the rational intelligence. The whole STEM is centered around that.
Yeah.
The entire field of art is another dimension altogether of
Hmm.
education. But preceding all that, first of all, who is the learner? We have to look at the learner as an evolving soul in nature, and nature has already planted something that this individual is meant to be, like a seed.
So you're proposing the idea of an innate purpose
Right. There is
in
an innate purpose in an individual. It is like a seed potentiality. Purpose of education is to awaken that potentiality and make the learner to be conscious of what is within, that prompt from within. And if one is able to open to that, then your journey is set in motion. It's like
how
once,
specific or open-ended is this purpose,
it is not
this
cast,
innate purpose?
it's not a fixed thing. Nature has a propulsion in certain direction with certain possibility, but nature
Hmm.
is also constantly adapting,
Hmm.
because the power behind nature, the wisdom behind nature is a conscious force. And
Yeah.
that's not a mechanical force. And it is in every step, it is adapting. Just like a river from the mountain, it is meant to reach the ocean.
Yeah. But it
But
could take several
it
paths.
will, yeah, wander
Mhm.
around and find its way. But
Mhm.
which exact path it will take, it's open.
Right. And so what is the idea of also like the purpose also evolving? How do you factor that in?
So that evolutionary dimension, this is where
Mm.
if the individual is trained to
Mm.
listen to that inner prompt
Mm.
and constantly align with it, and that's what
Mm.
I refer to as Swadharma. You are
Mm.
born with certain nature, certain possibilities, and
Mm.
you listen to that, and that
Mm.
will push you on the way. And
Yeah.
once you are awake to that propulsion, then you're surrendering to that propulsion, it will unfold itself. And this cannot be mentally constructed, but it can reveal itself in the mind as a
Mm.
vision given to you from within.
So you propose the idea of knowing who the learner is. How can the present day education embody that idea? Can start to embody that idea? Like where would you put the focus?
Focus, first of all, there are two types of knowledge.
Mm.
One is world knowledge, how the material world works, how the
Yeah.
economic world works, how the society works, how the
Yeah.
governance works, politics works. All these are external world and its systems and processes. There is a whole body of knowledge to be understood there.
Mm.
Then there is self-knowledge.
Mm.
Self-knowledge is not currently part of our education system.
Mm.
All that is given in the education system is a world knowledge.
Mm.
But you don't know who you are, what you are, how you are composed, what motivates you, what drives you, from where does the prompt come. There are so many different inner voices.
So
So in the
how
app,
can we
yeah,
how can we ground these ideas into like what does an education that embodies these ideas look like?
such an education system should have a strong component of self-knowledge for everyone. It's like a
Mm.
foundation course. No matter
Mm.
what world knowledge, what domain specific thing that you will learn, understanding yourself,
Yeah.
how your inner nature works, and how do you listen to your signal, and how do you filter out the noise,
Yeah.
this everyone should learn.
How much percentage would you give to the self-knowledge part
That's
in
a foundation. It's like asking what is the percentage importance of the foundation for a building.
so there are multiple foundations to be developed. There's obviously this like external world knowledge, that like STEM and like other stuff
Yeah,
that has like a crucial part to play, obviously.
that's a domain knowledge.
Yeah.
See, you need to be grounded within yourself. Then
Mm.
you're acting in a domain and specializing in this or that domain.
Mm.
So one is a subjective inner space and knowledge about that. Other is outer world and its systems and processes and possibilities.
Mm.
And between the two, there is a match,
Mm.
a natural match that happens when you follow your Swadharma.
Let's talk about Swadharma. You're you're one of the
Our connecting
prime
point. Yeah.
you're one of the primary creators of the program. By the way, it's a self-discovery program based out of Auroville. Um, what is the spirit of the program and how did it come about?
It is seeing the journey that young people are making,
Mm.
which I myself have done. Like there is a process of individualization that begins in your 20s, and you're waking up and you're beginning to question, but you don't know what is propelling you, what is prompting you. And people are beginning to wander and search around for meaning, something meaningful. Life as it is not making sense. So in Auroville, we were receiving large number of such youth who are looking for something meaningful.
Right. So it's interesting. We keep coming back to the idea of purpose.
Purpose,
In like
yeah, it
from
comes. That's a
from
key.
like different pathways. We keep just like arriving at that.
We will come back to the purpose as the really the North Star of the whole thing.
Wow.
So I saw that I myself had no guidance, and I spent many, like almost a decade wandering around.
Hmm.
And if there was support system to help young people to really sense their own true calling,
Mm-hmm.
that can accelerate their journey, and they don't have to wait for the midlife crisis. And it is out of that perception this whole course took birth. And it was also based on my own personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So the idea,
easy to speak about it and convey the experience. It's like transferring that fire, you know.
right? Transferring the yeah, the fire, the spirit.
Yeah,
What have
it's
you
not about
learned
information. Yeah.
from having run the program for almost or over 7 years now?
Yeah, I see the pressing need and the desperateness of the situation. And now the focus is on how to make it accessible to more people. Otherwise, it was very limited, and a small number of people were benefiting from it. So
Hmm.
our current investigation is how to now this 7 years of experience, how do we convert that into a scalable model?
Yeah.
And reach out to more people and refine the methods, because this is a foundation upon which the rest of the journey can be made for everyone.
Where are most young people blocked? What have you learned?
Blocked?
When, yeah, like, I mean, when people come for this program, and given that you get the chance to work with them
Yeah.
in detail, and like explore with them in detail, basically about their whole sort of journey, what have you learned? Where are um, what are some of the frequent points of blockages in young people through
One,
which
yeah.
like unblocking which you help them like get in touch with something deeper, or the fire, as you said?
It is more of a fragmentation, internal fragmentation. For example, the knowing faculty through
Yeah.
rational intelligence, conceptual way, is very well developed, because our current education system is stressing on that.
Hmm.
That's only a portion of the cognitive faculty.
Hmm.
But the doing faculty and the feeling faculty are untouched by education system. So one thing is to have knowledge, other is to have the capacity to do, and third is really enjoying what you do, loving what you do.
Hmm.
And this is
You're
fragmented.
aligning these
Yeah,
basically these fundamental blocks.
yeah.
When you say the capability to do, what is that a function of? So there's obviously this component of knowledge that enables me to do something. What are the
Knowledge
other
doesn't,
critical
yeah.
things that go into doing?
Knowledge doesn't enable you to do, it shows you the way. This is where you can go.
Yeah, like what I meant is that it's a critical component of me being able to actually, let's say, do or build something.
Right.
What are the other
It
things
is a
that are
starting point.
required?
It is a
Yeah,
starting point. Knowing
yeah,
that where do you want to go?
yeah.
Now, going involves actual physical things and doing it in reality.
Hmm.
That is where the faculty of willpower, your dynamic energy to move people, get things done, come into
Hmm.
picture. And material world and the systems and complexity is pretty high. And
Right.
when you confront that world and get things done, become a challenge.
Hmm.
So on one hand, you have amazing fantasy about things, and then there is this
Right.
confrontation with the world that is sluggish, that is resisting, that is not getting excited about what you want to do, and it
Right.
is opposing you on every step.
So that's also molding the
Yeah,
knowledge part from
it
creating that
is
feedback loop.
it is creating a feedback loop. So what it means to be free in your will to do, so that your will is flowing in its ability to cast your idea into action, into manifestation, that faculty, the
Mm.
doing capacity. But
Mm.
this knowing and doing by itself is insufficient if you are not thoroughly enjoying it. That's where the feeling, and the finest feeling, is of love and blissful ecstasy of action, creation come into picture. Otherwise, you may have knowledge, you may be tremendously creating things, but you're not enjoying it. You may be even
Right.
feeling guilty about what the hell did I create.
Right. So you're solving for that alignment, basically. You made an observation on like the inability of the traditional system to sort of develop the will. Can we unpack that further? Are you suggesting that the traditional education system is not developing in people the ability to do things?
If education system is focusing only on bringing knowledge to people, but if it is, say, a project driven learning where you're actually doing things, it's not theoretical learning, you're actually doing, manifesting. Say, for example, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you actually build an enterprise. You don't sit in the business school and theoretically learn about everything.
Right.
Your learning journey is actually building an enterprise. Then you know
Right.
the complexity of what it means.
So that's where the idea stems from in Swadharma, that like the first part of the program is to help sort of discover what is that thing, and the second part is to kind of building the thing, and the third element would, I guess, be like the integrating it with like integrating the knowledge, will, and like what brings you joy.
Right. That emotional mastery, emotional refinement, emotional development. And when we actually look into people, most people are wounded emotionally, disappointed, sad, angry, depressed. So there is a whole regeneration required at the emotional level.
Right.
A complete
And
loss of trust in the system, in the world. And that's what making people to commit suicide.
right. So what is the outcome of that regeneration? How does it help?
In the process of regeneration, there is also integration. And integration, not just knowledge, love, and will, but all these are connected with your soul's purpose. That's where you become a individualized person who knows his inner
In touch
truth.
with the purpose. Right.
Right. Purpose not in the form of a particular mission,
Right.
but the power of the truth within, uncompromising foundation upon which any choice is to be made.
Yeah.
Because life is like a river flowing towards ocean. You know that you are going towards the ocean.
But you're saying that even though these movements, there is some constants inside.
Right. Yeah, there is a fundamental inner checking. I'm going the right slope so that eventually I reach there.
Right. So developing that sort of connection and perception of that inner entity.
That self-drive arising from the deepest core of your being. And that flows out, and that's Initially, it starts like a trickle of drops of joy that is coming in. Then
Yeah.
slowly it become a small rivulet, and eventually it become a river. And you're creating, you are being created in the process.
Right.
You're getting shaped in the process. You're getting designed from within.
Who do you think is a good fit for a program like this?
Someone who already has a nudge from within, that fire to explore and willing to take on this adventure. Like, you're not happy or satisfied with the world
Questioning the
as it
status
is.
quo.
Yeah, you're questioning the status quo, and you want a deeper meaning,
Fascinating.
a narrative that is consistent with your experience, a narrative that gives wide span of vision into the past, into the future, into the present, and it harmonizes you in your action.
What does it mean to meditate on an idea?
Idea can be seen as a word or as an image or as a symbol. Now, when you hold it within you, that is called dharana. Take, for example, the word love. Now, you hold the word within you, there is a corresponding experience, right? Word love represents certain experience. But word in itself is just a hook, just a container. When you hold the word in your mind, you don't have the experience of it, you have the concept of it. But when you hold it as dharana, first thing is, this is the power of mind that yogins discovered. When you just hold it consistently, that becomes dhyana. From dharana, you move into dhyana, where knowledge about love begins to arise in you. Because it will tap into your own experiential past, and from memories and knowledge begins to arise. And that is really the first stage. You receive knowledge into you from within without reading books. Second stage is you begins to get experience of what it is. The experience will come and go. Third stage is you become love. Knowledge by identity. You are love. Your love is not something separate from you. And that is a process of dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Samadhi is where you enter and become one with that. So whatsoever you want to manifest in you, you hold it as a nama, as a rupa, as a word, as a symbol, as an ideal. When you hold it, it will bring the corresponding knowledge. It will lead you to experience. It will manifest.
With what spirit are we holding the idea here? So the idea is to not sort of intellectualize or rationalize of it. But
No.
So can you unpack the idea of dharana, the word that you used more?
You are a seeker. You do not know. That is the baseline. You are starting from a clean slate. I do not know what love is. To have the humility, I do not know. And I am coming to you to, first of all, to understand, then to experience, to embody. But right now, I am open,
right,
and surrendered, and I have curiosity, and I have humility to admit that I do not know.
Yeah.
And with utmost sincerity. So it's almost like a very, very sacred thing to do. Because
that's a beautiful idea.
Nature has to reveal to you, depending upon whether you are ready instrument to receive that. It's not in your hand. It's like
Yeah,
in the battlefield, Arjuna was the only person who realized that I'm torn. I can't do this. It doesn't make any sense. I'm crumbling. I don't know.
Yeah.
Krishna, I do not know what to do. What this destruction is all about. It doesn't make any sense to me. He was in deep sorrow.
Mm.
And from then, in that space, when you are holding, like Krishna is representative of that higher wisdom. You are approaching that. Then from there, you receive knowledge that you receive within you. It gets revealed to you. And from there, it moves towards experience, eventually to embodiment. So preparing you to be like how to remove your egoism.
Right.
Why am I seeking this? Am I sincere?
Yeah.
Am I truly in that space of not knowing? And I have this yearning to know, yearning to be, the thirst. If it is not there, if it is just an intellectual curiosity, let me test it out.
Yeah.
So it is not a
already
critique.
partial.
Yeah, it is not a critical thinking that will help you here.
Yeah. I mean, it could help you to a stage, but it'll not get you all the way through to the experience of the idea.
No, it cannot. All the questions eventually will come to silence and your heart is open. I want to know, please reveal it to me.
I kind of like how your vocabulary has so much of reveal, and that's so telling of like what your model is. That's cool.
You realize that even your own self-transformation, you keep struggling to change your habits and they just don't change. And you realize that it's not in your hand. Something beyond has to grant that blessings upon you, a greater wisdom of which you are a small, tiny wave. And when that chooses, then that reveals and you're blessed.
So the effort is kind of like in opening up, basically.
Yeah, seeker. You can become a seeker. You can kindle your aspiration. You can use your intelligent will to support it.
Yeah.
Quietly.
Yeah. I think that's like to me is like an inspiring idea of like if the goal of education was to like create strong seekers. I want to ask, is meditation an activity? Or like, I ask that because for me, like when I'm in it, my experience is a certain thing, but once like I'm out of it, it's completely different. But whereas when I look at you, you sort of seem meditative most of the time. So how do you embody that as a state?
That is in direct proportion to integration that happens. Our normal state is fragmentation. The mind is fragmented, emotions are separate, our doing capacity is separate, our energy is separate, senses are separate. They are all pulling in different directions. They are not integrated, harmonized. It is only, so normally, okay, let's say this way. Normally what happens is one of the part is seeking something. Then the other part is pulling in different direction and revolting. That's why you cannot be fully present. You cannot be wholehearted in anything because only a portion of you is able to engage, not the whole of you.
Right.
So the process is first of integration. And integration requires finding your center.
Right.
And then all these parts come into increasing harmony, and they start working together, harmonized, unified whole. Then also you are then opening to the universal nature to work through you. So not only you get synthesized and harmonized and integrated, then you are dissolving into a vaster nature. So it is in that space, karma samadhi become possible. There are different types of samadhi. One popular idea about samadhi is dharana dhyana samadhi, where you are immobile, you are inwardly absorbed in trance condition.
Right.
That is in a deep meditation, but you cannot act in the world.
Right.
The other is karma samadhi, that what we are taught in the Gita, the karma samadhi. You are in action, you are absorbed in action, but it is not you who are doing. You are only an instrumental condition. The vaster wisdom is acting through you. And you have the blessing and the privilege of knowing it consciously and let it work through you and surrender to that force of action. You're absorbed in it. You're completely absorbed. You are not there. There is nothing like, what is my Swadharma? In fact, all that has to be wiped out eventually.
Right. That's a starting point.
Yeah. Rather, it's not, I would say, starting point. That's where it enters, where you are not there. It is that vast wisdom that is acting through you, as well as it is acting through everyone and everything at the same time. You're surrendering to that. So there is a complete effortlessness. And that's where it becomes an increasing flow of your being into becoming.
Can you talk about what's happening in the process of journaling?
There are many ways to journal. One is to just document your day or your past. Other is to use writing as a means to explore deeper dimensions. This is where journaling becomes fascinating. Journaling becomes a journey of self-discovery, where you leave behind the surface personality and you open to deeper dimensions of your being, and that part, let it work through you, express through your writing. But this requires training. That what it means to actually be really silent and hold the pen and just start writing in a free flow manner and open to a flow that is entering into you and revealing itself. And as you master that art form, you can also give deeper prompts to different parts of your being and get a response from within that is flowing through your journaling action. And it becomes very transformative.
So it's also a good exercise to integrate.
It is. Personally, journaling for me is an incredibly powerful, transformative, integrative process. Our normal thinking is very random because it's very rapid. But the moment you take a book and start writing, because the physicality is involved, it is a slow process. And you naturally gets concentrated. And then surrender your surface personality and then open to something else. And that's where the magic begins. So there are many, many ways of using journaling to go deeper, to heal, to have deeper conversations with different parts of your being, even with others in your life, to know them from within you.
Yeah, it's more like getting into the more experiential realm of like just getting like, I mean, you'd probably start from like the thought and mind, but might slowly get compelled into exploring other territories.
Right. We can explore. We can really, and that's actually what all the great writers do. They open themselves to the large collective unconscious or the larger spirit of the time, and that will express itself through the writers as particular poem or a book, that become wildfire in the society.
Right.
Because the time spirit is expressing itself through this particular author.
Let's talk about governance a bit, switching gears. You've been part of a incredibly interesting experiment at Auroville for almost 30 years now. And there's probably like a lot to talk about Auroville, but kind of like confining to the idea of governance. So we're aware of the traditional forms of governance, which embodies these like hierarchical structures and invests a great deal of power in the individuals, selected individuals. And the other end of the spectrum in Auroville has been a great deal of decentralized, autonomous form. And this experiment has already been also running for a long time now. So I'm curious, what is your current model of understanding that synthesizes observations and learnings from all these models? And from there, we can also touch upon how do you look at data-driven AI governance? What aspects of the governance can be delegated? In your view, could be delegated to AI, and what should stay with the humans?
It's a packed question.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Let's say there are two fundamental movements that we need to harmonize when we are talking about a society. One is individual freedom. There is an impulse, fundamental impulse in the individual to grow, to expand, and be free. And it is something very, very fundamental, to be free, to grow, to evolve. Now, this has to be honored. On the other hand, when the individual is pursuing that freedom and creativity and growth at the expense of others, that become a disease for the collective well-being.
It has to be constrained.
Yeah. So we have on one hand the capitalist approach, which is maximizing individual freedom, where your self-interest is treated as legally valid. And it is perfectly all right in that system for 1% of humanity to own up majority of most of the wealth of the planet. It is legally permissible in that way of you are capable individual, you can harness as much as you want.
Right.
On the other side, the communist system emerged. We are looking at, say, collective welfare, and there is a collective discipline that is brought in, where individual freedom is constrained. And in that process, on one hand, there is more equality, but then human nature is such, even in communist system, became dictatorship systems, and with the loss of individual freedom. Too much centralized power. That was killing. On capitalist system, it became so much freedom that is destroying nature, destroying society at the cost of and on the self-aggrandization journey. And both are two extremes. So in every society, you will face this particular challenge of individual freedom versus collective discipline. What is the regulating policies, principles that society will follow? And everyone has to submit to that. Then so many different ways of organizing it has been developed. But then fundamentally, there is seeking of the individual to be free. So if we take water exists as solid, as ice, which has a particular structure. Individual molecules have limited freedom. Then another range, it becomes water. It has a higher degree of individual freedom. Then cloud it has a much higher degree of freedom, but the form is already very, very loose.
Yeah.
Same molecules existing at 3 different degrees of freedom.
Right.
And the degree of freedom an individual can handle depends upon that individual's evolutionary stage. Some individuals would require a solid,
more freedom than others.
Yeah, some would require cloud form, some would require a water stage, some would require a solid, protective, limited set.
I think maybe a better way to say, like, better word than require would be that they're capable of that level of freedom.
Capable of certain levels of freedom.
Right.
Without self-destruction.
Yeah.
Like in the name of freedom, we can self-destruct ourselves. So just like growing up children, we provide necessary safe containers where they can enjoy their play and creativity without damaging themselves. And whereas somebody who has become for free need that free space to express. So in every society, we will have people at different degrees of evolution. So the challenge will be how to provide that different degree of freedom according to the evolutionary stage of the individual.
That's a fascinating idea. Do you have ideas around how would the embodiment of this look like? Like how would this idea, how could it be grounded in, like?
I believe technology, AI in particular, can play a tremendous role in this. A society in itself, an organization in itself, doesn't exist in isolation. It has a purpose. Here again, we are coming back to purpose. An organized entity, a collectivity, has a purpose.
Yeah.
So that North Star has to be clear. Now, that's the North Star where we are going. This is where we are. This is the next step we have to take collectively. So the membership to the collective itself is with respect to the North Star. And the one who is coming and joining the organization itself needs to be aligned with that purpose. If it is not, there is no point in stepping into the ship going in that direction. So admission to this organization, collectivity itself is an important process where the choice is conscious. Now, so there are thousands of people, say, let's say it's something like Auroville, 50,000 people at a different degrees of evolution. And we have a North Star to go. And this is the past.
This is the diversity in unity in diversity.
Right. Yeah, that's a very, very important concept. The diversity and unity. Often, in the name of unity, what is established is uniformity. For example, globalizing something. When Coca-Cola is globalized, it is the same thing standardized and scaled across the planet.
Yeah.
Same drink everywhere. It's just horizontal growth. There is no diversity in it. But drinks are diversified in every culture, everywhere on the planet. There is hundreds and thousands of types of drinks, but everything gets wiped out by this single monolithic, standardized mass production.
Yeah.
Though it looks like you unified the world, but it is a uniformity killing entire diversity of the planet.
Yeah.
In a society, we need to ensure diversity on the foundation of unity. And this is a fundamental challenge. And the instinct is to create uniformity. Everybody is equal, so everyone gets the same payment. That's another mechanistic way of thinking.
Yeah.
People want everyone to wear the same uniform. So many of the collectivities tend to adopt uniforms and like equal division of the pie to everybody in the name of equality.
That's a suboptimal idea of unity.
It is suboptimal, and it is mechanical, unthinking, and not honoring the fundamental difference of the individuals and the fundamental impulse to individualize diversify. So this is something very fundamental to be considered in the design of the system. So when we have a collectivity of 50,000 people, and there is a North Star there where we are going, and there are hundreds of projects, and our current limitation is we do not have a ground level data where we are in terms of what has been done, how much is done, how much is yet to be done. So that collective intelligence or a planning overseeing intelligence is not yet in place. So there is a preceding stage where so-called organic growth happens. Say in a forest. Forest is a decentralized, distributed system of organic ecosystem thriving in itself.
Right.
Then man emerges and brings rational intelligence and plan to organize and plan to build cities, which is very different from nature. So a city can have a coherent design where water is managed across the region where it is living and it is not damaging this ecosystem. And it is possible to design, but it requires seeing the totality. So, but that requires certain level of overview, centralized vision of it. This is the big picture. Now, for that picture to be relevant to the ground has to supply, but this is the ground reality. So if we imagine it to be really like a living torus,
right,
hundreds of projects around, and these projects are to be in alignment with the North Star.
Right.
Because that will be one fundamental check to be done. Whatsoever be the project that is arising in the system, is it in alignment with the North Star? How is it taking people one step closer to that? If that is there, then it is where we are. What is the data with respect to that? Here is where we plan to go. This is where we are. That picture is currently not existing. So it will be critically important to have data for a society to self-govern itself. And collectivity, feedback loop that is feeding into the common knowledge pool, where every project has its direction set with reference to the North Star, and this is where it is. And modeling that collectivity to change the rules of the game that affects everyone else.
Right.
That will be algorithmic, for example. So those who defined the central regulatory algorithms needs to have a higher level of vision and alignment with the purpose. And that cannot be done by voting and things like that. That belongs to a period where humanity was transitioning from kingdoms to nation states. And today, we have to look at collective intelligence and feedback loops. And the intelligent algorithms that actually are social laws, governing principles. Say if somebody is generating wealth, now a portion of it has to be poured into the collective. And what is the portion that individual can hold and reinvest in the collective, or the person is pouring into the collective pot, where collective pot can decide to invest in the common infrastructure and facilities. So balancing between these two and the principles that would fine tune it will be very important. So our ability to model a collectivity, an evolving collectivity, and its behavior will be very, very valuable to make policy decisions, because a policy is really like an algorithm that will govern the behavior of the system. And it cannot be voting driven things, because that belongs to the past, that is not based on intelligence.
Yeah.
So elements are North Star, the purpose.
Right.
Then there is a collective intelligence that is feedback loop, consistent, continuous feedback loop. Then the regulatory policies, principles, algorithms that is constantly adapting and aligning.
Yeah, and you also spoke about the differential amounts of flexible, like the freedom to different individuals.
Yeah, and different individuals plugging into different projects according to their capacity and playing roles according to their capacity. What they can manage. What is the degree of freedom one can manage?
Interesting. It
But
would
we are far from
probably
it. We are far from it.
would be interesting to give an AI a prompt of developing like a goal is to a city that embodies human unity and diversity, and work back from there to what kind of governance models, social interactions, etc. it would
Actually,
show.
India is doing a tremendous work in this field. If we look at the way India is building public digital infrastructure,
Yeah.
it is so innovative,
Yeah.
so radical. Like in the world, there is two different models emerging. It is again a culmination of the age of reason. Sri Aurobindo says age of reason. Reason itself, the logic itself is a mechanical thing. It will create a mechanical state. A standardized perfection, uniformity created across the planet. That's where it will head. And we have two competing models. One is surveillance state American model. The other is surveillance state Chinese model. American model is more corporate surveillance. Chinese model is more government surveillance. And the standardized structuring, manufacturing perceptions, manufacturing behavior, standardized perfection that is sought there.
Right.
Whereas India is laying a foundation that is radical, where starting with Aadhaar, then UPI, and then FASTag, account aggregator, ONDC, all this built on the foundation of Beacon protocol.
Yeah. And
Idea
I think
is,
the recent data democratization also.
idea of data democracy. And Beacon protocol providing the unifying layer upon which a diversity can thrive, and every service is designed as small, independent, interoperable service. They can start plug and play with each other.
Right.
And a tremendous diversity can arise, and a collective intelligence can thrive in that space. Unifying digital foundation is getting laid. Some 5 to 10 years down the line, India will be a completely different space in terms of the explosion of the collective creativity and unifying foundation that is holding it all together, and data democracy. And this is unique in the world.
Let's zoom out a little and think what are some of the problems you think about deeply? What what keeps you up at night sometimes?
There is a stage of your journey where you are thinking about problems. After a while, once you start seeing the future, you're not thinking about the problems. You are inspired by the future glory and the wisdom that is leading everything towards that manifestation. So that inspiration sometimes keeps you awake. Sometimes it is pouring in. You're so overwhelmed by that joy of seeing what is unfolding and manifesting and what is working behind the veil. On one hand, world is disintegrating and falling apart. And then there is something else that is emerging from behind the scene. And the more you see it, more you see the miracles, and more you know that we as humans with our limited cognitive window, it's hard to know where it will lead. But there is a tremendous, adventurous, transformative journey that is unfolding. And the more you are in touch with the magician, it's a joy. So you're not worried about problems. You gladly surrender to even the most severe challenges that are given to you.
So the whole sort of way of looking at it is turned around.
Yeah, this is a
I'm
fundamental
curious
shift. Yeah, I would like
that
to add here. Siddharth. One thing I was referring to, installing in the mind the idea of oneness.
yeah.
Other is to see that this oneness, this one being, is profoundly loving, delightful being with whom we can enter into relationship. And world is not a dangerous place. It's not an enemy out there whom I have to find a way to compete and succeed and survive. That is foolish notion of our evolutionary past,
That is
driven
such
by
a
fear.
relieving,
Yeah.
relieving mindset to have.
So we need to look at the universe as a living, conscious, beloved, manifesting tremendous beauty and glory.
Wow. Yeah, that is inspiring. What's a day like in your life?
I like to keep it structured. So I have structured my day from 5 to 10. Get up in the morning at 5, get ready, do the basics, and go to Matri Mandir by 6, have my meditation, inner work. And then 7 to 8, basic asanas, sun gazing, sun bath, all that. And 8 o'clock, having breakfast, get ready for the day. And then, 9 to 5 is a working time. And it's my own personal choice to do that.
Right.
And that way, structured it that way. Then again, 5 to 6, again, some body work, walking, this or that. Again, then back to Matri Mandir, concentration, inner silence. Again, recalibrating, constant retuning of the instrument. And 7 to 8, dinner time. And again, 8 to 9:30, some work. And 9:30 to 10, journaling, review of the day, planning of the next day. 10 o'clock, back to bed. And also I track my sleep to see the quality of the sleep. So these are all, again, areas of constant improvement. What you eat, how you sleep, what kind of workouts, how you study, how you utilize your time. So there is a will to progress, aspiration to move towards greater and greater harmony and perfection in everything that we do.
Right.
So if you can get the dinacharya designed, consciously put in place, and that's the wheel that generates your life.
Yeah.
So that's constant tinkering.
Very wholesome day.
No, but you don't get it right all times, because unexpected things happen. So you have to shift your sleeping time, but you can always come back to your baseline.
For sure.
So I fix the baseline, then you swing and you come back.
I think I have one last question. What is the idea of love, and how do you feel it has evolved for you over the years?
Yeah, first of all, I cannot even refer to that as an idea. It's an experience.
Yeah, experience. Thank you for that.
It's an experience that of pure joy and harmony and creativity and flow and beauty and delight. And
it's an all-encompassing experience.
It's a radiance. It's a radiance of your being. You know? Initially, of course, it is confused for some person out there who gives love to you.
Yeah.
That is very rudimentary experience and understanding. But as
Yeah.
you dive deeper into that journey, and if you surrender to it, and you're opening to the ocean of love in which all things exist, and that begins to radiate, and you sit alone in love. It's really very nature of our existence, very foundation of our existence. It radiates a joyful, glad radiance. Harmony, rhythm, beauty,
Right.
creativity, everything is part of it.
Yeah, and it's free of, like you were saying, like just insecurities and like the sense of like you against the world. You're not against the world. You're one. That, so in some sense it relates to your experience of oneness.
Nature, see, nature at a deep level is love. And that's why our highest conception is the mother. Mother is embodiment of love, divine Shakti, in whom we exist. And in that love is carrying us. The more we realize and more we surrender to her love, there is nothing to fear. And it's not your love. It's not that you love X or X loves you. These are very narrow windows through which to experience and look at it. Though that is how the heart opens a little bit and give you the taste of it. But the more you learn to open and surrender to the vastness of love, and it is about receiving and flowing. Just like humanity learned to harvest electricity and spin all the machines, and now we are harvesting intelligence and running intelligent machines. We must be able to, we are really designed to receive love and allow that to radiate from us. Nature is preparing for us for that. That's the highest glory, the most wonderful experience to enter.
I think one more question comes to mind, and
Yes.
that is, what is the role of pain in opening the heart?
Since we are unconscious and we resist change, so the divine sculptor has to sometimes knead the clay and shape it, make it malleable, flexible, open, and then make it fluid and then shape the vessel. That process sometimes is painful, but the more you realize, more you surrender to the master craftsman, to the divine Shakti who is shaping you, then the pain reduces. Even if the biggest blow that comes to you, you know that is a way of shaping you to something that you did not, you were not willing to move forward. So then that push comes. So the more you are able to see that you're getting molded, it is your resistance that is causing pain. It is your fear that make you shrink and cause resistance. And once you learn to trust, once you establish within you the attitude that there is one being, there is one love, one ocean of love in which we exist, one mother wisdom in which we exist. If you are able to convince yourself that this is that, and that experience can begins to enter you, and you trust and you relax, and it is less and less painful and more joyful.
Yeah, I think there is like your attitude and just the way of looking at things is so inspiring. And yeah, I feel every time we have an extended interaction, I feel lighter, and like I get like deep insights into just like nature in some sense. Like it could be like about myself, or it could be about the working of nature or something. So that's really cool. And I guess in some sense, while I'm still figuring out my idea of love, there's also a feeling of being loved.
So
Yeah, to experience that you're being loved,
yeah,
and it is unconditional and it is available all the time.
yeah,
That's literally mind blowing. So that mind can rest in peace and heart can open up and widen.
so yeah, so thank you for this
Thank
conversation,
you.
and
Thank you, Siddharth.
I feel privileged to have met you closely.
Yeah, it's such a joy to have you, and being the very first participant of Swadharma and having seen your journey. And this is a shared journey, shared joy. And thank you for what you're doing, what you are, and your sincerity, your commitment, and that fire in you. That's beautiful.
Thank you.